years. They have a little bit of knowledge. In this area. He's been at it for a while. Their primary focus is assisting real estate agents, sellers, and buyers in successfully closing their real estate transactions. Through their time in the industry, Tim and Deborah, who is second, have experienced many different real estate cycles and have always quickly transitioned to be the leaders in their field. This is done through an increasing dedication to the business and to each other and every client that they serve. Their professionalism and service is highly respected in the office and in the field, and they have a tireless commitment to their clients and their transactions. They have put in front of you, I have topic bullet points. Should I read topic bullet points?
You know what, you don't have to. We're just going to go through it.
You guys are going to go through it.
We'll do it.
They've got information for you, but let me describe to you for a minute. I want to highlight this because we have investors in this room. Okay, so I'm going to tell a little bit of one of your stories. Now I'm going to let you fill it in. So Tim primarily has made the bulk of his time in residential real estate. So how many of you guys buy residential real estate? Okay, so single family, that all works for you, and so he knows that field incredibly well. But he has also worked with people who buy on the courthouse steps. He has also worked with wholesalers. So he has a really good idea of what it is that you guys need, the timeline you need it in, like in 15 minutes I'm going to buy this property. Okay, so he's knowledgeable in an asset class, but he knows what you guys need as investors, so that is why I have invited Tim to come talk to you tonight. Come on up, guys. Introduce Phil because I couldn't possibly.
Yeah, Deborah, my partner, who we've met last time, she couldn't be here tonight, and so our office is in Glendale. So I called up the office and got the best guy I could get, the operations manager for all of Los Angeles County. And Philip Wilson here, he's been in the business a long time. He grew up in it, and his dad is actually was one of the guys, along with some other people, that wrote like title insurance policies that are active this day, that are in all the CAR contracts that are just very important. And we're going to go over a little bit about that tonight. So we're with First American Title. We're right here in Glendale. And I've been doing it 25 years. Eat, drink, and sleep it. I've been through a few cycles, and I think that's why Christina was excited about having us too, is that the cycles that we've been through, I've seen the ups and downs, I've seen the investor market go really heavy. I've even worked with the hedge funds, those guys that came in and bought 2,000 properties in 6 months in Southern California. So we kind of know what they're looking for and kind of know what, how to give you guys the service, because if you guys are in that in a little way or a big way, I can help you in that, okay? So who knows what title insurance is? Okay, it's pretty simple. When you guys have health insurance or auto insurance, what are you insuring against? A future event, right? So title insurance is an insurance against the past. So from the moment that we record that deed and close that transaction, that second back, First American Title is taking the responsibility for what's on the chain of title. Okay? So, and some of the examples that might come up is we close the transaction, and the person who sold the property borrowed money from somebody and signed a deed of trust. Okay? Person comes back to collect their money, they go to the door and they're like, wait a minute, there's a new owner here. I'm going to foreclose on the property. Then knock, knock, knock. This, the old owner owed me $50,000, pay up or I'm foreclosing. Guess what happens to the new buyer? They freak out and everything starts going crazy. Well, that's when they call First American, and we have a corral of I want to say attorneys that are nasty little guys that will go figure this out. And you know what? If they're really owed $50,000 and that's a legitimate deed of trust, First American steps up. The buyer stays in the property, and we have to pay that $50,000. So for us, it's a big, big deal to do our research properly. Just like it is a big, big deal when you guys are going to the court steps, or when you're knocking doors, or when you see that house that's got weeds and the windows are boarded up and you're wondering what's going on. Yeah, those are gold mines. We like those little gold nuggets out there in the industry. But just know that we've got to do our research to make sure that you're doing what you're doing, because it's possible that you try to take a shortcut. I don't recommend shortcuts. Some people like to go knock on the door and they like to say, they find the owner and it's in distress and they want to go direct because they want to save a few bucks. Be careful, be careful. And we can help you a little bit in some of the research, but since we're not ensuring that, you're going to go direct, you have no coverage. So if that $50,000, person borrowed $50,000, and the person comes back knocking on the door, that's your problem. So just be careful. Just know that, because a lot of people like to go, no, I'm not going to do escrow. I'm not going to do title, this and that. We're going to go over a lot of things tonight that I think are going to affect you when you're investing and things you need to watch out for. But I do want to talk about the title policy because, again, there are several different policies. And there's a policy, it's a basic policy, and you get basic coverage. And then the CAR, California Association of Real Estate, CAR of Realtors, in their contracts, which everyone uses, it specifies that you have to use a title policy that's called the Alta Homeowners Policy. It's like it's like the Cadillac of all policies. But what it does cover is it covers issues that we don't see on the chain of title. Post-policy coverages. Some are as extreme as, I used to live in Diamond Bar, and there's called the country. So they'd buy these big houses, and then they'd want to level the backyard and put a tennis court or a pool or whatever. But then they go to the city and says, you can't do that. Well, that's something that it might be a title thing. So they bring it up to title, and sometimes we cover that. We cover their losses because now that property is not marketable in the way that they thought it was going to be when they put the pool in. So now we have to come back and we offset that cost. Now there are deductions on those things, but deductibles, not deductions, deductibles. But just to let you know, those are the wacky things that title covers in this policy that we're going to talk about. And I brought Philip because Philip, you know a little bit more about some of those extended coverages. So if you can talk about those a little bit too. Absolutely. Some of the fun things that you guys are going to want to hear.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for coming out on a Thursday night to talk about title. So, it's going to be a fun group, I can tell. Thank you, Christina, for allowing us to be here. I'll have to. Okay. Let me just put it on here. Where was I? Policies. And I used to work with all the claims attorneys that Tim was talking about, the vicious ones that are out there suing everybody and getting your money back. Basically, we'll start with like a simple title policy, a basic title policy, which is it's called basic coverage. You'll see that it's 100% of our basic rate is the pricing on that, and it's usually the cheapest one you can get. There's not a whole lot being covered in that. Some title companies will sell that. I don't know, it sounds like there might be some investors here that do buy from the steps. Some title companies will say, hey, we'll insure you at the step. I don't know, have any of you guys heard title companies say that? No, good. They used to say that, a lot of them did. But what they were offering was basic coverage. And if you have a basic coverage title policy, it doesn't include coverage for bankruptcies, which a lot of times people that are going to foreclosure or about to be foreclosed, as a last minute effort to stall the foreclosure, they'll file for bankruptcy. If that happens and you don't see it and you don't know about it, you just bought yourself a lawsuit. That's what you did. So you have to be really careful because that title policy that somebody sold you that was basic coverage is not going to cover or protect you for that. So you need to be very careful about the policies you're selecting. The second, more larger coverage that you can get, which is the ALTA/CLTA homeowners policy, which is the default policy on all of the car contracts. That one has a lot more coverage to it. It does not include the Western regional exceptions, which I'm not going to bore you guys with what those are. There's 6 of them. You can look them up online. I encourage you to do that. Know what you're getting. But those are removed. And the ALTA homeowners policy has much greater coverage for you. Like Tim said, post-policy, meaning, yes, title insurance is kind of like reverse insurance. It's going backwards, back in time. But if forgeries are committed on your property moving forward, First American will defend you in court against those, whatever losses you may have incurred, or to get those documents removed or annulled, I guess, if you want to call them. So that's the benefits of getting that additional coverage. Some of you, if you guys are into commercial, you'll hear a lot of times about an expanded coverage policy. So this is even more coverage, and the reason it's expanded coverage is they're submitting to us a survey, an ALTA survey. So you're going to a surveyor, having them look at the land, and figure out, you know, the exact dimensions. And they're giving that survey to the title company, and the title company is covering exactly what's on that survey. The reason that's important, and we don't do that for residential properties, just so you know, but the reason that's important is it was my first day, of course, in the claims department, as it always is. And I got this, like my second claim I'd looked at. And it was these two older guys that were suing each other. And they'd been suing each other and cross-complaining a lot. By the way, if I say any terms that you guys are like, what the hell are you talking about? Stop me. I'm okay. This sounds like a really educational forum, and I don't want to just talk over your guys' heads, so please. So they had been suing each other for years, and I'm looking at all these court documents. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Well, long time ago, these two old guys, 2 lots right next door to each other, vacant, nothing there, dirt. One of them decides to build. Goes out there, builds his 5-story building. You know, his neighbor's watching him the whole time. And apparently he has built over onto the guy's property about 3 inches. So he waited to tell him, of course, hey, you know, you're 3 inches on my side of the property, and after the building's been built, and sues him for it. Says, I need that's a pretty big lot, you know, and this expensive land in downtown LA. So, okay. Guy decides, I'm going to shave the building back. So he shaves the building back, right? Years go by. Building, vacant lot still. Then the other guy that has the vacant lot decides to start building. Of course, builds it all the way to the top, probably bigger than the guy next door, right? Just to get back at him. Then I get this claim. It's a claim because what happened was the guy that built the second building built it all the way up against the other building that was built first. And what happened was the gentleman that shaved the building back, it was unbelievably Machiavellian in what he did. He shaved it back 6 inches and didn't tell anybody. So when the second guy built his building, he built it all the way over, crossed over 3 inches, and couldn't shave the building back. Tag, you're it, right? And I get this claim, and I'm like, this one goes right to the attorney. This is above my pay grade. So getting a survey on your property, especially when you're dealing with commercial properties like this, it's important because, you know, if you're ever next to an old curmudgeon that carries a grudge for 20 years, that's why you need title insurance. So you know, there's various types of coverages. Every title company that's out there that's legitimate that I've seen should have in the back of their preliminary title report, which is what is issued before the deal is closed, a list and a description of all of their policies that are available to you. Title companies all have the same policies. We don't change, like Lawyers Title doesn't have a different policy than we do. We all have the same policies, we all have the same coverage. We might not have all the same exceptions, which is what you see when you get that preliminary title report. So make sure you're looking at that, make sure you go through and read that stuff because it is important, and it's, like Tim said, knowledge is key when you're buying property because it's you know, most people's biggest investment. And if you're an investor, it's what you do. So it's something you should know. You want to?
Yeah, I was just going to go over, like, we were talking about the policies, and I wanted to talk a little bit about who pays for what, because you're going to get your closing statements from the escrow, and you're going to see a couple of different title fees on there. So the seller, what they do is they buy a title policy to clean up their past and their mess, to make sure that when the buyer comes in, it's free and clear.
Do they have to do that by law?
They don't have to. No, I mean, you can go. You and I can go just exchange a property right now, and I can give you some money, and then it's not by law. But this is what title is all about.
But they're concerned that there's stuff in the past that they're not sure about, that they're like, oh God, I better like cover myself. Is that what we're saying?
What would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what's happening. The idea behind title insurance is that there's flaws or defects
I can
in
do that.
county records. There could be. It's just like, it's any insurance product that you're selling outside of, you know, real estate. I mean, does a tree fall on a home every single time a home's built and there's a tree next to it? No. God forbid that happens, but sometimes it does. And so what we're insuring against is that worst case scenario happening within the public records and how they're maintained. Or, like, you know, she brought up fraud. People You know, if all men were angels, you probably wouldn't need insurance products, right?
Yeah.
We would just shake and exchange money and everything would go really well.
Yeah.
Question. What does the ARTA really mean? And here also saying that another called CRTA.
Yeah.
Well, what's
The American Land Title Association and the California Land Title Association.
So,
Okay.
You would,
No, go ahead, yeah.
Of this policy, CRTA?
So, because of the way the federal government and the United States is set up, real estate is essentially governed by the states. It's not a federal mandated thing that all the states will run like this, right? It's actually all the way down to the county level on how documents are maintained. So what happened was, what sprung up was a bunch of different variations in states that were saying, hey, these are the rules that are going to govern the title insurance industry and how it works. And there's going to be a policy that's going to be state specific to you that we issue to you. So it's a state specific policy. Well, what happened was businesses grew and changed and there became 50 states and 400 some plus counties. It got chaotic, right? So what happened, especially for lenders that were like, well, we're Bank of America. I don't care if the property's in California or Garden City, Kansas. I want to know what I'm getting, and I don't want all this mumbo jumbo in all the different states. So the title companies got together and said, okay, we're gonna have a different policy now. We're gonna have an ALTA policy, which is the American Land Title Association policy. And that is a standard policy. So usually what you're seeing, that when that ALTA policy goes out, that's usually on your lender's policy. So that lender's policy goes to the lender who's like, hey, I'm Bank of America, I lend everywhere, and then the owner's policy is usually a CLTA policy, because your owner, he's not buying everywhere and probably doesn't even know what his policy says really. But that's why he's getting a state specific policy.
And that's what I was going to go into. So
As a lender, let me
Yeah, perfect.
follow that. As a lender, and I've read these things, 100 times, and I find most of them impenetrable.
Yes, you actually do need a doctorate to read them.
I'm the one guy. How do you know what you have? I mean,
Well, that's why I said if
because the prelim will say CLTA, but we require, in our lender instructions, we say Alta 2006 policy.
Yeah.
And when I read the policy, which I get like after the property's sold half the time, it seems like that's another issue. How do I know what I have?
So you have, what's actually being issued is, you're correct, it's a CLTA/ALTA policy, which means it's an ALTA policy in a CLTA policy format. So if I were to bring up, I know, I know, right? It's so if I were to have a Texas, a TLTA, Texas, land title, I would show you what their policy looked like versus what our policy looked like, and it would be two very different things, because again, there's state formed policies. Now, to answer your question directly, is there a difference in the coverage? No, not between the owner's policy and the lender's policy. There's no difference in coverage other than who we're covering, who the insured is.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say, but really what you do need to, if you want to focus on what you're covered for, look at your exceptions. The exceptions will change. There'll be standard boilerplate policy, right? I'm not going to go over. If you want to, I can, but yeah, you guys will all be napping, right? Like,
Andy's already rolling his
I
head.
guess I get the free class. Because they're all sleeping. So you got to look at your exceptions that come on your preliminary title report. So the preliminary title report is issued, and whatever ends up as those exceptions on there is going to end up on your policy.
Right.
So those are the things that you need to look out for, and that's what you know that you are not covered for. It's a little weird, because sometimes people are like, oh, look at all these exceptions, I have a lot of coverage. No, you don't.
Yeah, that I understand. I know what the exceptions
Yeah.
are, and those are readable actually. It's the rest of it I can never tell, what policy is. The CLTA
Now
or is it
readable.
ALTA?
Well, if you want, we can talk offline if it's something that you're really interested in, because I think people should know. I really, truly do. It's a lot of times it's people's biggest investment, and the fact that they don't know what the insurance covers on it, that's problematic to me as a human being. Not just as a title person, like by title, right? As a human being, it bothers me. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. So if you want to talk offline, we can. Absolutely.
Yeah. So good.
Cool.
Well, Philip, he brought up a lot of good stuff. Owners, lenders. So that's what I was going to say. The owner is buying a policy for the new buyer. But think about it this way. So the lender lends 80% of the value of the property, and they don't want to share that policy. So now the buyer comes in and they buy a title policy to protect the lender. Does that make sense? That's why there's two policies, an owner's policy and a lender's policy. The lender's policy is a lot cheaper because we've already done all the homework. We've already done the research on the property. So we give them a discounted rate. But there are actually two policies being issued on that property on the transaction. Okay? I mean, imagine. Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm a newbie. So I'm paying for that policy that insures the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're the buyer, and you borrow money.
Yeah, so I'm paying for that bank, the policy to insure the bank.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, is that required by law or not? Does the bank require
An institutional lender probably won't loan you money unless they get that coverage. Yeah. It's not required by law, but it's required by them. Yeah.
You should tell the difference between the homeowner and the lender policy.
Well,
So the loan title insurance is the same meaning as lender policy.
I'm sorry?
Here's the loan title insurance.
Yes.
Same meaning as lender policy.
Yes.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Tim, can you repeat it so other people can hear, and it's also on the
I passed out a flyer that talks about who pays for what. And Chuck was asking the question, so the loan title policy is the same as a lender policy? Yes. You see that on the buyer side.
Just go down that, 'cause it looks like we're getting a couple people.
Yeah, we can do that.
Topics, right?
Absolutely. Well, we were just going to go through all kinds of good stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, there's a lot of topics.
There's actually a ton of stuff I wanted to go over with you guys, especially since you're in the lender space or the investor space, and we've got Philip here, as you can tell. Yes, Andy.
Can I throw something really simple into the equation? For
Yes, sir.
those of the newbies that are here?
Love it.
You and I know that the most important thing title insurance guarantees to the buyer is that you are the owner of the property. That's the most important thing that title insurance covers.
Mm-hmm.
It covers a lot of other hoo-ha, but at the end of the day, the only thing that really counts is it says, we guarantee that the person that sold you to this property had the authority to sell you the property and you own it.
Well, I would say it even more. Just once you buy that property and you're in it, you're going to stay in it.
Yeah.
We're ensuring that you're going to stay in it. We're going to cover it. Our attorneys are going to go fight for you. Okay? Is that simple enough? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
If a property was acquired and there was no title insurance during the transaction, can you then go back and put title insurance on there?
You can. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little bit of effort because those people that sold the property, what if they disappeared? Because once you're on the property we find this every day. So Philip and I own a piece of property, and Deborah, we decided to put her on the property because here's a good example. I'm going to travel for a month in Europe, and I want Deborah if something happens to me, she gets the property and she's right. We come back. Philip and I take Deborah off the property. Well, Deborah was on even if she was on for a day, but if she has some derogatory information against her, let's say she was in a car accident, she's got liens, creditors chasing her, those liens attached to the property now because that's an asset, and they will go after it. So now First American is super, we're gonna have to go back and get all those people and get uninsured deed app. We're gonna get all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's a process. It can be done. We can issue title insurance after the fact, but it's a lot of work. Yeah, and we might decline on doing it.
Oh, really?
First American might say, sorry, we can't because we need this, this, and this, and it might be so difficult to go get. That person, whatever, they disappear. It happens all the time in Southern California because we have people that own property, but for example, they went to Mexico and we can't find them anymore. That's what happens.
Sorry.
Yes.
I want to ask quickly, if you do a search and you can pretty much find out who owns the property, correct?
Yes. Well, we have what we call a chain of title. So we have guys inside all day long, and they look at the chain of title, and we're looking at the county public records, and so that tells us who's on title. All right. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So I can say that if John Smith and I made a deal and he gave me title of deeds, I can look on there and know that John Smith is in fact, I can do a title search.
But remember my scenario? Deborah came on for 1 day. What if Deborah came on for 1 day 5 years ago? That's still, those creditors are watching. As soon as we insure it, we pay
So
the.
what you're saying is I can know that John Smith is the title.
Yeah.
But you don't know who.
But you don't get title insurance.
You
And
don't
then,
know who he owes money to.
yeah, you don't know who he owes money to. But that's why we're insuring all this stuff. Yes.
What happens is that if somebody that takes the title at the trust, and the trust is a private document, and how do you locate who's the owner?
Yeah. So
The beneficiary of the trust.
we'll need to see a copy of the trust.
That's required.
Yeah, we'll need to see a copy of the trust so we can see the trustees, the chain of trustees on their successor trustees. If they took title in the name of the trust, and all our beneficiaries or the trustees of the trust are still around and nothing's changed, we just get a trust cert, they sign off, and it's a trust certification, and we trust them. That's weird. We trust them that they own a trust. Oh well, play on words.
To your pricing point about insurance after the fact.
Yes, that's what I was.
So I'm gonna say two things about that.
Okay.
I look sideways when I hear that kind of stuff. Not at you personally, but like when someone calls in and says, "Hey, I sold a property 5 years ago. Now I'd like to have title insurance." I'm immediately suspicious about that. Why wasn't it done at the time? And I'm gonna start asking a lot of questions.
Sure.
The way we price it is not really expensive as far as we're concerned, but what I'm going to ask for will get pricey because I need to set a liability value for that property. So like, let's say the transfer took place 50 years ago. I'm not going to give you insurance coverage for what the price of that home was 50 years ago.
I see.
I'm going to give you the coverage for what you want right now. And so I'm going to ask for two things. I'm going to ask for a BPO, broker's price opinion, which will probably cost you some money, and an appraisal.
Oh, okay.
And then once I get that, I'll figure out what the pricing is, what the liability for the insurance is, and we'll go from there. But just know I'm going to ask a lot of questions because I'm going to get suspicious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why BPO and an appraisal?
I just want 2 price points. I mean, that's just what we do.
So you do 2 appraisals?
Yeah, in case someone comes back and says, hey, or there is a claim, and maybe I only insured it for $400,000, and they're like, well, the property was clearly worth $500,000, and I only got one thing in my file. I'm getting dragged into court probably. So, that's what it's just safe.
I just thought there was something.
Yeah. Other than it's just my brain.
Right.
Just quick question. So in this case, a lot of people are investors, and so say a property in this area is obvious that the property is worth about $500,000, but you get it at a discounted rate, say for $200,000 for whatever reason. So now, do you look at what the property is worth, or what I'm purchasing the property for?
I look at the contract. So I'm going to insure
Sorry,
the
can you say that
amount.
again? I didn't hear.
I look at the contract.
Repeat the question so the whole.
So what he's asking is, let's say, most of the average home in Pasadena is worth $500,000. I'm just using numbers. But he gets it at a discounted rate, $200,000. Do I insure it at the $500,000, which is the average home price in Pasadena, or do I insure it at the $200,000, which is the contract purchase price? I'm insuring it for $200,000 because that's my obligation to that contract. I'm not going to guess at what a house value is because that's not what I do. I'm not an appraiser. I do title insurance. So that's short answer.
What
I have
about
a
the?
question for the room. Does everybody understand the basic process of title insurance?
No.
Okay. So is there any, so more than one?
Yes.
Okay, good. So if you could in 3 minutes just go, okay, so you
Sure.
go to buy a house.
Sure.
And then from there.
Yeah.
What is title insurance?
Yeah, we got way ahead on policies. Got some good. No, but we got some good questions, you guys. I didn't expect these questions. This is a lot more than I actually expected. I'm super glad that Philip is here. I mean, he's in looking at these things every day. I'm out there with you guys. I'm out with you guys and calling it in. Hey, what can we do? How can we get this deal? So, so the process is you identify a piece of property. You would contact your title company. Hopefully it's First American. And you would call me, and then I would refer you. I've got a colleague that sits on the inside, sits right next to Philip. And he's got the computers on his desk, and he's got the chain of title. He's got access to the public records. He's got access to what we call a general index. That's the person's name, because we will try to run the person's name. If it's too common of a name, You know, we might ask you for more information, but we'll run the person's name to see what's hitting on that property. And this is all the preliminary stuff, what we call customer service. Okay, so we're going to give you what we see, and this comes with no assurances or insurances, because sometimes our data, we're relying on the county. And if somebody on Friday who was wanting to go home fast and typed in something really, incorrect, so it happened. Yeah, no, county, yeah.
Right?
So we're giving you this prelim underneath on the information that we give you. This it's called a property profile. We put on it, this information is deemed reliable but not guaranteed. You're going to see that on everything that we're not insuring. Okay, so just know that, because what happens is a lot of real estate professionals, they go out there and they call us this information. They go sit with the homeowner, and then they tell them, "Oh, I see that you've got this child support lien." Now the couples are fighting right in front of them because there was no child, but we, so Pete, just know this, right? Those are some of the fun stories that we get. So that is called customer service. When you get into contract on the property, you're probably going to go and open escrow. At that time, escrow will call us, or the realtors involved will call us, and we'll open what we call a preliminary title report. Now that's going beyond the colleague that sits next to Philip. That's going into a whole research and examining department. And these guys are thorough. And they are looking at the chain, and they're going back deep into the chain. They are looking at names. They are pulling these deeds. They're looking to make sure that these deeds are not fraudulent or not whatever. They're looking out for all this kind of information. And then we issue a preliminary title report. So you'll get that in escrow. If you've been in escrow, you'll get this preliminary title report. You're supposed to sign off on it. We want you to read it. So that will have all the information, and it will also tell you in the preliminary title report the things that we need to have corrected before we can close. And that would be items like deeds of trust. Got 2 deeds of trust on the property. We need to get a demand on those. We need to know how much to pay them off. Our taxes current. We need to watch out for taxes. So that's on the preliminary title report.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Again, a deed of
This is
trust.
great.
Can you talk about that for a second, please?
Sure. Yeah, there's a loan, and the bank, when you get a loan from the bank, you sign a note and you sign a deed of trust, and then they record that in the county records, and that goes on the chain of title.
And you're saying that you go back and look at that?
We go back and we look at that and we report that all out to you in the preliminary title report. We're going to report everything that we find.
And how would that be like a screw up or something like that?
Oh, it might not be.
I'm just asking what would that you talk about what that scenario would be for
some
screw up in the chain.
In the chain, what would happen? For example, they refied, paid off the old loan, but then this lender never reconveyed it. So now we've got 2 deeds of trust still active on the property.
Reconveyed means a payoff notice.
They paid it off, and they sign a substitution of trustee and full reconveyance, and then they record that, and that takes that deed of trust off the property. Okay, it's okay. So we report the whole chain. Yes, sir.
Some of us leave deeds of trust and put the reconveyance in our safe.
It happens all the time.
Good way to make property look neat.
Yeah, happens all the time. And then we have to go, and escrow's got a tough job because they're trying to find out who the beneficiaries are. We've got some secret ways to go and find you, hopefully, if you're still around in the United States, right?
Yeah, and the state got tired of that kind of stuff. And now they've started to find lenders who are lending and not recording the reconveyance. You're finding like $100 a day for every day you're in violation of not reporting that as quickly as possible.
So if the lenders turn it over to the borrower, they're still responsible to record?
Yeah, no, the lender is responsible to report.
That's my point.
Sometimes, yes, lenders used to give it to the homeowner who didn't know what they just did, and they got a document that didn't prompt them to record it. This is the kind of stuff that people were doing. It's terrible.
Some of us know what they just did, but we don't want to tell the world.
There are people that do that too. Yeah, but the state has tried to remedy that going forward to make sure that the homeowner is not affected by these deeds of trust just sitting open unended, even though they've been paid off 30 years ago.
Yeah. So we got the preliminary title report. You guys should really take a good look at that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask for what we call a statement of information. So I wish I would have brought this in. I have it in my trunk of my car. I carry this around just for this purpose. I talk to a lot of real estate companies every day, and a statement of information is we get the homeowners, everybody who's on title, we get their name, previous residences, social security number, whatever, because we want to see what's on the general index, what's going to hit on their name. Because deeds of trust, grant deeds, those types of things are recorded at the county recorder. Well, these other, child support liens, things like that, are not recorded. They are filed. So IRS, all that stuff. Yeah, sometimes IRS will attach your property, but it's not that often. Yeah. So now we've got to run this, what we call statement of information. As an investor, you guys, I cannot stress how important that is for you, because the book that I was talking about, no kidding, is that thick. The name is John Flores. If I run John Flores in LA County, I get that many pages of issues for a guy named John Flores. Remember, it's all the John Floreses. But we don't know which John Flores is on that property. And I'm really trying to impress this on you because I have issues, and I had one today where the guy went and bought direct. So he bought direct, and he did it 3 days ago. He got a cashier's check for $150,000. He was scoring on this property. He turned over the cashier's check, went to escrow. Okay, let's record fast. And we got SIs in. 2 o'clock this afternoon, we got SIs in. SIs are statement of information. Remember, we got to check that John Flores name. 3 liens popped up. A $2,500 lien, okay. The buyer, he's an investor, he can eat that. $5,000 lien, now you're like, wait a minute, this is kind of getting into my spread here. $150,000 lien. Now, so this guy, my investor, is leaving tomorrow for Mexico. No, he's not. And he's right. He's not. He canceled his flight. He is running to Chase. Thank goodness the cashier's check was from Chase, and he banks at Chase too. And he's going to try to get them to reverse that. If he can, he's out. This guy can just, So just the statement of information, you guys. You can call me before you're going to buy a piece of property, and we'll do the best. But if it's a John Flores type name, I can't help you that well. I mean, we got to get social security numbers, and we got to get history with this person, and then we can run that for you. All right. If that's my one, take that away tonight and just put that in your memory bank. Yes, sir.
In a lot of distressed sales, do you take it subject to the liens? So, as you're buying it at a cheap price.
Yeah, I would say that would be my I'm not giving you advice, but I would argue that any open liens on the property that are going unpaid through the transfer, to me, in my mind, would diminish the value of the property, right? You just take it out and say, well, if you owe $200,000 on a $500,000 home, I'm going to buy it from you for $300,000, right?
Yeah.
So that's what that other box on a lot of grant deeds, the document that has the transfer of the buyer and the seller taking place. There's 2 boxes on there. There's one that says full value, right? Everything's getting paid off. The seller's paying everything they owe on the property off, transferring it full value deed to the new buyer. The box that's right underneath there that a lot of people don't check and don't even read or understand, it says subject to all liens, encumbrances on the property. So when that box is checked on that deed, that's how you know, hey, guess what? And when I'm chaining on a chained title, I know that deed is not a full value transfer, and I can't just come forward from there. I got to go back and look what's open. What are the other liens on the property? Because that was subject to. So it's a great question.
That's funny. I always thought that was just there to deal with the text.
For decoration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I saw a hand up.
I thought that was the purpose of that box.
Yeah.
But that's what it's saying to people. I mean, there's a lot of things in these documents. I mean, you got to understand, we've been doing property and recording these documents a lot of times for hundreds of years in this country. And as times change, sometimes things get left behind and they just stay on there, and we don't understand why or why we're doing it. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, why do we notarize documents? It's kind of a weird thing to do. Like kings were doing it. I mean, sealing documents with the wax and their rings. It's a silly thing, but we do it, and maybe it's time to relook at it. So it's a good question.
I think Will brought up a good point. It's something we should talk about too. So you're out and you've scouted this property and you found a good one and you've talked to the owner and they're in distress and they want to sell it to you. Well, you don't do your due diligence and they tell you, oh, I only owe this much. But they didn't tell you they have a couple of loans on the property. Maybe they're talking about the one that they're current on, but they're still behind on another one. So if you're going to be buying from these people, you got to make sure that you're buying a first deed of trust. Now, deed of trusts are recorded, and they're recorded in, whoever records first, they're in the first position. Then there's a second deed of trust, third deed of trust. So we're in position here. You can go in and think that you're buying a great deal, but you might be buying the second deed of trust. And now you got to bring the first one is now your responsibility also. Okay? So.
Or just to kind of add on to that quickly, the reason you want to make sure you're buying it first is sometimes if someone's not paying their second mortgage, they're probably not paying their first either, right? So, and they're out, you're out there about to buy a property and you're like, oh, it's only $150 or whatever on a property that's worth, $2,000. I got that, right? And you buy the second, and the next day that first goes to foreclosure too, you're gone. Every secondary lien, tertiary lien on a property is wiped out on a first foreclosing. So you might say, hey, I got the note. Doesn't matter. You just lost the property.
And wouldn't that come up in escrow though?
Well, it normally should, yes. But if you're buying at the courthouse steps, foreclosures, escrow's not hanging out just like,
right.
Wait a second, let me run it. You know what I mean? That's why yes, that would be something that would be caught, but
okay, so how do you do your due diligence if you're in that situation?
Well,
and buying the courthouse steps, and how do you guys do this and how that occurs?
so, and this is something that we're supposed to talk about. Do you want to talk about it?
No, we'll just share back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
What I'd say is this: if it were me doing it, I would get a preliminary title report. I just would. I think that, like I said, knowledge is key when you're doing something like this. Obviously, it's risky enough just buying a home, but when you're buying a home from the courthouse steps, I think it gets a little bit riskier. And I'm in title insurance, so I'm naturally risk averse. I'm questioning everything, so know where that's coming from. Well, I would get a preliminary title report, and what that would cost from the title company. First American, I'll tell you, will charge you cost basically is $395. That's what you're going to pay to get that preliminary title report from us, and it'll show you everything that's on that property. That's the only true thing that will reflect that. A property profile will not. It will not run liens. It won't run the individual's names. It won't, tell you if there's a BK or something out there. So that's why that preliminary title report, in my opinion, is so important. Now, it doesn't cover you. Like Tim said, we haven't issued a policy at that point. But we are showing you, as of the plant date, which I might have just said something you guys don't know, a plant date for us is basically the county's recording documents every day, right? Every day they're recording. And we're, as fast as we can, we got a bunch of little minions back there just keying today, right? Oh my God, these deeds get recorded, right? And they don't get to it all in one day sometimes. So we have a gap that gets created between what our records show to the title company and what the county has probably already recorded, which we have no idea what it is. So right now in Los Angeles County, it's 3 weeks. So we got 3 weeks of dead air. Anything could have recorded, anything. Now, title insurance companies have what is called gap coverage. We cover the gap. So, what I'm saying to you is if I tell you, hey, go get a preliminary title report, know that on there is going to be a thing called a plant date. And that's going to be how much far back in time you're not seeing documents that could potentially have been reported on that property. So that's additional risk that you're taking on at that point, in addition to just not being covered either by what we're doing. And I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to sell you guys anything. But I am going to give you pricing. If you pay the $395 and then you come back to me later and you're like, hey, I bought this. I want to get coverage now. I bought it from the steps. Now I want coverage. Okay, great. We can do that for you. And I will also credit you back that $395 that you paid for that preliminary title report. So if it were me, that would be my hedge against the risk I'm taking. Is it foolproof? Absolutely not. But that to me is the best way to do it.
Tim, when you were doing this for flippers courthouse steps, what's the process that people would do?
Yeah, so remember my colleague on the inside, his name is Aaron. What he would do is, what I would recommend to anybody who's going to the courthouse steps, while you're physically driving there, and the sale is happening at 10:30 in the morning, at 10:15 I would be on the phone with Aaron on the inside. Tell me more. What have you seen? Anything new? I wouldn't even just wait till then. I would have done it every day until when I first heard about the property. I would follow that property along until it goes to the court. But remember, we still have that plant date, the gap. But so Aaron's going to do the best he can, but you still want to know if anything new has popped up. All right.
What does Aaron like to drink?
Pardon me?
I said, what does Aaron like to drink? We don't let him drink.
No, we keep him. Yeah. He's on an IV. We keep him. We just want him like you stay straight the whole. You think smart. Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I'm a note investor. Every time when I do due diligence on notes, I order owner search instead of the preliminary title report. So what would be not on the owner search that will be on the preliminary?
It's a good question for Philip. I'm glad you're here.
I've not heard of an owner search product, so I'm going to guess what it is. It's just showing you who the owner of the property is.
No, it actually shows all the lien position and all the title, recorded,
Right.
passes, and everything. IRS.
So that was what I was talking about when I said property profile. So there's a lot of terms that'll be used interchangeably. And a property profile is a very basic customer service, like he was talking, customer service product, where like a realtor or somebody who's maybe kind of looking at things and saying, well, what's on this property? Or the app that I have on my phone, I can pull it up right now and show you first, second, third position liens and who the owner is. What that's not going to show you though is it's not going to show you the public record, the GI search, general index search that Tim was talking about, where we actually go and look at who that individual is and if there's any liens personally attached to that person, which would then attach to the property as a result. Make sense?
Okay, so that to me is not really important.
It isn't,
Right.
because you're assuming that those loans were insured.
Exactly.
Right, so you don't have to worry about that.
I see.
What is GI index you talked about?
So,
You said
General index.
What is it?
what
Database?
Yeah, essentially that's what it is. Everything that we're doing is a database. The county has no databases. Basically what the county's doing, and they used to have these old, we used to work in the plant up in Glendale, these dusty old rooms, books, yeah, just books everywhere. I mean, it's chaos. And what you would do is you would pull out a book, and it was called a grantor-grantee index. Right? They call it TORTI. And you would just write down, like, my name's Philip Wilson. I was named after a chick band. As we're talking about names. They would just say Wilson to, Williams, right? Byers Williams. That's all they're writing down, Wilson and Williams, right? D. What we do is we then take that and make it into a chain of title, where we say, hey, a deed recorded on such and such a date is this instrument number, and it's from Philip Wilson to John Williams, right? And we show all that. So there's that whole chaining process happening. Separate from that the county's doing is the county's also taking any documents that were filed with the court, and the attorney walks them over to the recorder's office and just records them. And doesn't attach them.
Electronic file?
Yeah, so those are all done electronically now. They're scanned in so we can see them. But more importantly, that's a separate database that's running alongside everything that we're recording as far as deeds are going. The county is also recording all these other recorded liens that are not, back up a little bit, deeds when they're recorded have a legal description on them. So that legal description attaches to the house that has a legal description, which is like basic ones, lot 1, of tract 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Well, we know what to do with that. Well, that goes lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there, right? When a judgment is recorded, attorneys don't put legal descriptions down. They just say, Philip Wilson, ran up his bar tab, never paid it, we're going to sue him. And then that goes down as basically a lawsuit. I didn't appear in court. Now I'm in default judgment out against me in the courthouse. So that sits over here. It doesn't attach to the property unless I buy that property. Now that default judgment moves with me. And I'm not allowed to refinance or move, essentially, until that lien is satisfied.
How does that happen?
How does what happen?
How does it get attached to the property?
Well, it happens when basically whatever liens are against me when I purchase a property, that will automatically just move with me to that property.
To that asset. Yeah.
We're the ones compiling that information, saying, oh, from this database you bought this house, and from this other database you had, your unpaid bar tab, for 10 grand. Here that goes too.
Okay.
So we're the ones kind of attaching it because
It's your fault.
it's our call, because what's going to happen is if all of a sudden, I try to sell that property and we miss that judgment. Remember what Tim said, California's a first in time, first in right state. So that means that judgment for $10,000 is going to sit in a superior position to the Wells Fargo deed of trust for $350,000. Which means that they're going to smash the panic button real quick when they find that out, because that is going to go to foreclosure, or a default judgment is going to be issued against me. And that's when Wells Fargo calls us and says, hey, you gave us title insurance and didn't tell us about this unpaid bar tab from 1992. Yeah.
We have 5 minutes, guys, so.
Oh, wow.
I was gonna ask a
Believe it or
question.
not.
Pete has his hand up like for 20 minutes.
Okay, so the quick question that I think is going to be yes or no to is I can't go, nobody can come in and claim title to a property without the buyer or the person in the position referring it. That's question number one. Question number two is if somebody has a proposal lien, or if you borrow money from a bank and you put it on your credit card, do they have specific properties that they attach it to, or could they come after the property that I have?
Good question.
So to your first question, could somebody just say, hey, this is my house, get out?
Yeah,
Yes, somebody could do that,
How
which is
does-
why you get title insurance.
Somebody if Bob Smith owned the property and he titles it over to me,
Mhm.
Joe Jones could go into the courthouse, record it as his in between and own the property?
He may not even have to record. All he has to do is prove it in court, which is what I'm saying, is if somebody.
Okay, they have to prove it though.
Yeah, they have to go to court.
But when the first guy sold gave it to you,
Yeah.
you probably went through you had a bona fide escrow and you had title insurance. So as you, Pete, you're in the property now, you're in the property.
Right.
Now that's where we don't want claims. We're gonna have to go fight this in court, but we will fight it for you.
Okay, the
And-
second thing is that if you have a bank loan out, then the bank will typically, they go after the property that I'm on, or can they go after any property if they're not already, if they don't have a lien
No.
on the property?
So the bank you're gonna do a deed of trust and a note. That deed of trust is going to be secured to that one property. It's not a blanket deed of trust going to all your properties you own. It's that they'll foreclose on that one property.
Unless you sign a personal guarantee.
Well,
Against everything you own.
yeah, but you're right.
Pretty rare.
That's very rare.
So the bank
If you're a businessman and you have a company, you personal guarantee it, then it's going to attach to all that.
So what you're saying basically is when a bank loans you money, they, at the loaning time, decide whatever collateral that they're going to go after. And they're not going to go after some other collateral that,
Unless you had an agreement to do that.
okay.
But typically it's against
I
that.
have 2 topics I wanted to make sure you guys heard tonight. One was bankruptcy, and the other was foreclosure. So, hands up for who wants to hear more about bankruptcy and why you care about that. Somebody's sitting on your house and have bankruptcy. Okay? And how many wants to hear more about foreclosure?
How about both?
Okay. So, if I could get some foreclosure in there, that'd be great.
Okay.
And personal request.
Okay. And some bankruptcy.
And some bankruptcy.
Okay.
You know, we-
So here's what I do.
We do have 5 minutes to 9 o'clock. But we
Okay,
can run a little bit
here's what
over.
I'm going to do is I'll tell you, here's what, when I'm out visiting with real estate offices and realtors, the first thing they do is they go out and they go take a listing. They get somebody who wants to sell their house. And they start talking to the person, and the guy says, oh, don't worry about that lien. It was wiped out in the bankruptcy. Realtor goes, okay, and they put it on the market, and then they sell the property. We get into escrow. We get towards the end of the escrow, and we're ready to close. And First American's going to say, what about this lien? And then everyone's going to say, well, wait a minute, it was wiped out in the BK. So when you file a bankruptcy, your obligation to pay the debt does get wiped out. But that creditor put a lien on the property. The lien is going to stay with the property. It needs to come off the property before we can transfer the property. So what happens? So now the guy who says he filed BK and kind of did a like this to the creditor, he's got to come back. Could you give me a release? What happens? Creditor goes, pay up, sucker. Right? That's what they do. The other thing that they can do is they got to go to the BK attorney, and this is what I tell the agents, is like when you're out there and you see the BK, all you can eat, $5.99, on the side of the road, file BK, right? Well, you're going to get $5.99 worth of bankruptcy attorney support here, okay? What the attorney should have done in the beginning is when they filed the bankruptcy is they should have got a, what is it? I'm sorry, I missed the word escaping me.
Order to avoid lien.
Order to avoid lien, okay? But the BK attorneys, when we call them, and we have called them a couple of times, say, why didn't you do this? Well, because they were in trouble, and if I would have charged them $7.99, they would have never used my service, so I gave $5.99, and we didn't do the order to avoid lien. So, like I said, they have to go to the creditor. Can I have this? Creditor says no, pay up. Now you got to go to the BK attorney again. You got to open up the case again, and you got to get a court date. Okay, so you're at the end of closing now. You got to get a court date, and then you got to get in front of the clerk or the judge, and the judge will then say, okay, order to avoid the lien. But what does that do? So you're under a timeline. Maybe you got rate locks going. Maybe you're going to wholesale this property on, but that's going to tie you up. So that's what I like to tell you guys about BKs. Be careful when they say that, that it's been wiped out. Don't worry about it. Yes.
So I have a situation with my parents who have some property, and they're trying to transfer the title to me, but there's a lien on the property, but the guy who they got it in lieu of a debt, and the guy filed bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're waiting for the bankruptcy court date in April. So even though the bankruptcy will wipe out his debt, the lien on the property will stay on the property.
Until that point, until they get the order to avoid the lien.
How do you get the order to avoid?
The court will do it.
During the bankruptcy, or is that a separate?
During the bankruptcy.
During the bankruptcy.
Yeah. So make sure you get the order to avoid the lien.
Order to avoid.
Yeah. So that takes it off the chain. Yes.
So are there coverage caps when I buy a policy from you? So is there X amount of dollars that you're guaranteeing this property for? If it goes over, I'm responsible for it, or X amount of legal fees, and then we're done. Sorry, you're gonna have to take care of it by yourself, or is this just a blanket policy?
It's a good question.
Short answer is there are different levels of coverage. The most that you can reach is what we call policy limits, which is a complete failure of title, which means we blew it really bad. And we would pay out the maximum price value of the property that we insured. So if we bought a home for $1.2 million and we just blew it, and now you're getting thrown out, and we're like, well, here's your $1.2 million back. We're so sorry. I've seen it happen one time. Doesn't happen a lot. There are other types of losses that you can suffer under the terms of the policy. So one that happened just a couple weeks ago, there was a parking space that was mentioned on the legal description. Lady moves in, buys the condo, moves in, parks in the spot she thinks she owns, doesn't own it. HOA has it, right? So then she puts in a title claim, says, well, I can't park, I gotta park across the street. What am I supposed to do now? Oh, well, we're gonna talk to the HOA, see if we can buy her a spot, or we're gonna pay what we call a diminution in value. Meaning, you thought you bought this, but you actually bought this minus a parking spot, and we think the parking spot's worth $15,000. We're so sorry. Make sense? Yeah.
Gives you a good idea what title insurance is right there. That's good stuff. Okay, so let's go to the foreclosure real quick. All right. So there's a lot in foreclosure. What aspect of foreclosure would you like us to go over?
Well, you got this great foreclosure timeline, so people can walk through it.
Gotcha.
What point?
Okay, gotcha.
Title will truly be the key point.
Gotcha.
The point where title is really important. Foreclosure.
Yeah. So you guys pretty much know the foreclosure timeline. People are late on their mortgage. Banks don't always file a notice of default right away. So the first thing that the bank's going to do is once they have caught up to this and they want to start the foreclosure process, is they'll file a notice of default. Okay, that notice of default gives us 90 days, or gives you 90 days, or gives the realtor 90 days to remedy bring it current, sell it, negotiate with the bank, short sale, whatever. Okay. Then what will happen is, if nothing happens in that 90 days, there'll be a notice of trustee sale. That's the urgent one, a notice of trustee sale. That's 21 days, and the bank is usually at that point where they're like, okay, it's going to sale at the Pomona Courthouse at 11 o'clock on July 1st. All right? So you know your timeline is right there. You know something has to happen right there. What I've heard, and every bank is different, every lender is different. When it gets to within like 14 days or 10 days of that sale date, they're not obligated to take the money to bring it current if they don't want to. So just be aware of that. So because a lot of people are negotiating, a lot of realtors are negotiating to stop the sale. The bank doesn't have to stop the sale. They can keep going if they want to and take it back. So that's the notice of default, notice of trustee sale. You talked about liens. What liens would we be worried about?
They're just saying, title is so important in that, especially if you're looking to buy a foreclosure property.
Yeah.
Right?
What would be some of our red flags?
What loans are paid off
Yeah.
in the foreclosure. Because
Gotcha.
title's the one who knows where the loans are standing. That's why title's important.
Yeah.
And then if the first is foreclosing, the second and third, but if the third is foreclosing. Right.
Yeah, we went over that a little bit when we were talking about buying the deed of trust. But now it's really going to make sense because we're talking about the foreclosure.
Yeah. So that's why it's important. Again, back to what I was saying. What I would do if it were me, because you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one down here. Send notification to the IRS. So we're talking about liens that are important. Guess what? The federal government at the end of the day says, if you owe us enough money and you're going to foreclosure, we're just going to come in and take the house. We don't care who you think owes money, or we don't care if the lender says that we should have gotten $200,000. It doesn't matter. IRS takes it. So that's the first lien you really got to watch out for. So if you see an IRS tax lien on there, that would be a huge red flag. Or if you're at the courthouse steps and no one else is bidding on it, that could be another telltale sign.
The IRS lien is behind the lien that's selling. They have a very short amount of time to pay off the lien that's selling to take the house. They don't get to just take it and ignore that lien.
Yeah, I think it's 180 days.
Yeah.
They have. After that 180 days pass, then basically the IRS is not going to take it.
If you're buying the first and the IRS lien went on 5 years later.
Right. And I've seen the IRS do that one time.
Yeah, they never do.
And I've been working in title for a week, so.
He's a fast learner.
Just making sure you guys are late.
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't happen that often, and you're right. It's not like an indefinite time period. The IRS can just stomp in there and say, "This is ours now." Ha! It's a set time period. So.
Yeah. The only thing you have to worry about, so you get the property at the steps, and you think everything's cool, and you start the rehab, and the IRS comes in and takes it. You're out the rehab money. They're not going to give you your rehab money back. Just know that.
And you won't insure it until that 180 days is run.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, let's just go through for a minute. So I'm foreclosing on, I'm a private money lender.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a third position lien on a piece of property that I got a really nice interest rate on. But now I'm foreclosing on my third position. So I foreclose on it, I do all my little steps, it goes to auction, and it sells for less than my third, than where my third is. What happens?
Then somebody just owns that property now. They've assumed that note, and now they own that property, and now they've become responsible for the second and the first. So you got to start making those payments.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what happens.
So I get the property.
You get the property, but you got to
But
make
I'm
those
now
payments.
responsible for the second and the first.
But it goes back to why it's important to do your research, because if they're already in that foreclosure process, it's already starting to fall, and you buy that and you foreclose on your third, and it doesn't matter, that thing's getting wiped out. So, and you just have to, that's why you just gotta know. You gotta do your research. You're putting a lot of money into this stuff, so it's important to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I have a
Okay,
comment.
guys. So,
Let me make a comment.
okay, make your comment, Jeff, because that needs to clarify.
It's not already, it's still after the foreclosure, when the bank owns it. A lot of people think that since it's been through foreclosure, everything's been wiped out, don't need to buy title insurance.
Yeah.
That is, I've learned, fortunately, I bought title insurance, but we had a claim, and that is absolutely not true. If you're gonna buy an REO, you still have to buy title insurance.
Yeah.
So,
Or
Yeah.
buying HOA foreclosures, we don't insure those. So if someone's out there saying that, Because they do.
Tax sales. I mean, there's so much to talk about.
Are you
but-
guys, so are you guys hanging out a little bit tonight? Because we hang out and we eat. Are you guys hanging out? Or are you guys taking off?
I can be around.
You're gonna hang
we
out
can
for a
hang
little
out
bit.
a
So we'll have them tonight while we're eating. You guys can corner them with more questions. Did you guys appreciate the level of expertise they brought tonight?